I thought my husband was protecting me from my own mind, until I found out my memories were being rewritten, and the people I trusted were part of it. I didn't think I would ever write something like this, but I can't sleep anymore, and when I close my eyes, I keep seeing the same thing: my husband laughing, while his phone lit up with a message that said, "Did she sign the papers yet?" At first, I told myself it was nothing. People text weird things all the time, right? That's what I wanted to believe. But deep down, I already knew something was wrong in my marriage. I just didn't want to admit how far it had gone. It started slowly. Little things you can't really prove. My husband, Daniel, started changing about a year ago. He became careful. Not better, not worse, just careful in a way that made my stomach tighten whenever he was around me. He stopped leaving his phone on the table, stopped falling asleep before I did, started going to the garage to work every night at exactly 9:17 p.m. Not 9:15, not 9:30, 9:17. Like it was scheduled, like I wasn't supposed to notice. One night, I asked him casually, "What are you doing out there every night?" He didn't even look up from his plate. "Work stuff. You wouldn't understand." That sentence hit harder than I expected, because I used to understand everything about him. Or at least I thought I did. The first real crack happened 2 months later. I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in his jacket, a hotel receipt. Not local, not cheap either. 2 nights, same room, repeated every 2 weeks. My hand started shaking so badly I dropped it. And the worst part? The name on the receipt wasn't his. It was a woman's name. Reserved under Melissa H. I didn't know a Melissa. At least, I thought I didn't. That night, I didn't confront him. I just watched him, like a stranger in my own house. He kissed my forehead before bed. "Good night, sweetheart." And I remember thinking, how many women has he said that to? But the real nightmare didn't start until his mother got involved. Linda. She was always polite. The kind of woman who smiles too much but never says anything real. From day one, she never liked me. But she was smart about it. No insults, no direct cruelty, just little comments, like poison disguised as concern. "Oh, you're still working?" Daniel likes a more attentive wife. Or, "Some women just aren't built for this family." I used to laugh it off. Now I realize she was testing me, all along. Everything escalated the night she invited me over for dinner. Daniel said he had late work, so it was just me and her, which already felt like a trap. The second I walked in, I noticed something strange. My wedding photos were gone from the hallway. I asked casually, "Did you change the pictures?" She smiled without looking at me. "Oh, those?" Daniel asked me to put them away, said they were cluttered. That was the first time I felt something shift inside my chest, because Daniel would never do that. Not without telling me, not without us deciding. Dinner was silent, too silent, until she finally said it. "You know, you've been under a lot of stress lately." I blinked. "I'm fine." She tilted her head slightly. "That's not what Daniel says." My fork stopped midair. "What do you mean?" She smiled again, that same rehearsed smile. "He worries about you, your memory, your moods, your interpretations of things." My stomach dropped. "No, he doesn't." But even as I said it, my voice didn't sound confident anymore, because suddenly I remembered. Last week, Daniel told me I misremembered a whole conversation we had. I was sure he said something cruel. He insisted it never happened. I laughed it off at the time, but now it felt different. Linda leaned back in her chair. I think it's sweet he's trying to protect you. Protect me from what? She finally looked directly at me, and I swear to God, her smile faded just a little. From yourself. I left that house shaking, and when I got home, Daniel was already there. Even though he was supposed to be at work, he was sitting in the dark living room, waiting. That's what it felt like. Waiting. Where were you? He asked softly. I tried to keep my voice steady. Your mother's? A pause. Too long. Then he nodded slowly. Oh. She mentioned that. That was impossible, because I hadn't texted anyone. I hadn't told anyone. So how did she know? He stood up and walked toward me, and I noticed something I had never noticed before. He wasn't angry. He wasn't worried. He looked calm. Too calm. Like everything was already under control. I think you should start writing things down, he said gently. I frowned. What? He smiled slightly. You've been forgetting a lot lately. It might help you stay grounded. My skin went cold. Because that wasn't concern. That was instruction. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. The receipts, the hotel, the missing photos, Linda's words, Daniel's calm voice. And then I did something I shouldn't have. I checked his phone. He left it charging in the kitchen, for the first time in months. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I picked it up. Unlocked. No password. That was the first strange thing. And then I saw the messages. Not from Melissa. From someone saved as Mom. My breath stopped. Because Linda's name in his phone wasn't Mom. It was Linda. But this contact? Mom. I opened it, and I wish I hadn't. The most recent message was from her, sent just 12 minutes earlier. She's becoming unstable. We should proceed with phase 2 before she remembers too much. Daniel replied, Agreed. The paperwork is almost ready. Then another message came in, as I was staring at the screen. From Linda, sent while I was holding the phone. Is she reading this right now? I dropped the phone. It hit the floor louder than anything I've ever heard in my life. From the hallway, Daniel's voice called out softly, Sweetheart? A pause, then footsteps, coming closer, slow, controlled. Like he already knew exactly where I was standing. And in that moment, I realized something that made my entire body go numb. This wasn't just cheating. This wasn't just manipulation. This was planned. And I was never supposed to notice. If your partner and their parent were both acting like this, would you confront them immediately, or secretly gather proof first? Daniel's shadow appeared in the doorway, and he said something I will never forget. Why are you holding my phone? I didn't answer him right away. That was the first time I realized something terrifying. My body wanted to obey him, even though my mind was screaming. I slowly bent down and picked up the phone again, like nothing happened. I dropped it, I said. My voice sounded choosh, like it didn't belong to me. Daniel stayed in the doorway, not moving, just watching me, like he was measuring whether I was still stable. He walked in slowly and took the phone from my hand. Our fingers touched for maybe half a second. Cold, detached. No warmth at all. That's okay, he said softly. Accidents happen. Then he smiled. But it wasn't comforting. It felt rehearsed, like he was performing me. I expected him to be angry, to ask what I saw, to panic. But instead, he just turned the phone face down on the counter, like it didn't matter. Like whatever I had seen was already part of the plan. That scared me more than anything else. That night, he acted normal. Too normal. He made tea, sat next to me, even asked about my day. But every sentence felt like it had two meanings. Every pause felt intentional. And I couldn't stop thinking about that message. She's becoming unstable. We should proceed with phase 2. Phase 2 of what? And why did it involve me? I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda's smile. That calm, surgical way she looked at me, like I was something she had already categorized. The next morning, I decided something. I needed proof. Not feelings, not intuition, proof. Because I was starting to doubt myself in a way that felt unnatural, like my thoughts were slipping out of my hands. When Daniel left for work, I did something I had never done before. I followed him. I kept a distance, too far to be seen, close enough to lose my breath every time he turned a corner. But he didn't go to his office. He drove across town, to a building I had never seen before. A small private clinic. No sign that made sense. Just a glass door and a security camera watching everything. I waited in the car for almost an hour. My hands were shaking the entire time. Then I saw him come out, and behind him, Linda. I froze. She was supposed to be at home, or at least, that's what I thought. But there she was, standing next to Daniel like this was normal, like they did this every day. She touched his arm lightly and said something I couldn't hear. He nodded. And then they both looked around, not casually, carefully, like they were checking for something. Or someone. I ducked down instantly. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would give me away. When I looked back up, they were gone. I drove home in silence. My mind was spinning. Clinic, phase 2. Missing photos, hotel receipts, and that contact saved as Mom. Nothing made sense anymore. Except one thing. They were not hiding an affair. They were running something together, and I was the center of it. When I got home, I searched the house. Not emotionally, systematically, like I was trying to prove I wasn't losing my mind. And in Daniel's office drawer, I found a folder. Thick, neatly organized, labeled Care Plan, Subject, EH. My name isn't EH, but my initials are. My knees almost gave out. Inside were documents, medical evaluations, psychological assessments, notes, and signatures. Mine. But I had never signed them. One page stood out. A doctor's note. Patient demonstrates increasing emotional instability, memory inconsistency, and susceptibility to suggestion. My hands started shaking again, because I recognized something worse. The handwriting wasn't mine, but it looked like mine, almost perfectly. And then I saw it, a legal document, power of attorney, signed by me, giving Daniel full control over finances, medical decisions, personal legal matters. I couldn't breathe. I had never signed this, never even seen it before. I heard the front door open. I panicked and shoved everything back into the drawer. Too late. Footsteps. Daniel. Home early. Again. He walked into the office and stopped. Looked at me. Then at the drawer. Then back at me. Silence. Heavy. Measuring. You were snooping, he said finally. Not a question, a statement. I tried to speak, but nothing came out at first. Then I forced it. What is this? I pulled the folder out and held it up. My hands were shaking so badly the papers bent. For the first time since this started, Daniel didn't smile. He looked tired, almost disappointed, like I had failed a test. "You're not supposed to see that yet," he said calmly. My stomach dropped. "See what?" He stepped closer, slow, controlled, and said something that made my blood turn cold. "Your treatment plan." My throat went dry. Treatment? He nodded, like he was explaining something simple. "You've been struggling for a long time. You just don't remember how much." That sentence hit differently, because it wasn't anger, it wasn't denial, it was certainty. Absolute certainty. I backed away. No, I'm fine. I'm not sick." He sighed softly, almost like he was talking to a child. "That's part of it." My hands were shaking uncontrollably now. "I'm calling someone." His eyes didn't change. "Who?" I hesitated, and in that hesitation, I felt it. That moment of doubt. That split second where I wasn't sure anymore. And I hated myself for it. Daniel stepped closer again and lowered his voice. "You've been calling people before, remember? Then forgetting. Then getting upset when they tell you the truth." He tilted his head. "So who exactly would you call?" My mind went blank, because I couldn't remember. Not clearly, just fragments. Voicemails I didn't remember leaving, messages I didn't remember sending. I stumbled backward into the desk, and then I heard her voice, from the hallway. Calm, composed. "Linda, I think it's time we stop letting this go on." She walked in like she owned the house, like she had always been there, and she looked at me, not with anger, but with finality, like a decision had already been made. And then she said, "She's at the point where denial is dangerous." My vision blurred for a second. Dangerous? For who? Me? Or them? Daniel didn't argue. He just nodded, like he agreed, like this was normal, like I wasn't his wife anymore. I was a case. Linda pulled out a folder from her bag, thicker than mine, and placed it on the desk. "I've already spoken to the clinic," she said. "They're ready." My knees went weak. "What clinic?" She looked at me directly and said, "The one where we help you remember what you did." Silence. That word. What you did. Not what happened to me. Not what I experienced. What I did. My mind started racing. What did I do? What were they talking about? Why did it feel like I was missing something huge? And then Linda added softly, "You should be grateful, honestly. Most people don't get this much help." A pause. Then she smiled. "And most people don't get a second chance after what happened to your sister." My entire body went cold. Sister? I don't have a sister. But Linda just stared at me and said, "Oh, sweetheart, that's the part you always forget first." If someone showed you proof you did something terrible, but you couldn't remember it, would you trust your memory or their documents? Daniel stepped forward and gently said, "We're going to fix this." And that's when I realized I might not be the victim in their story. I might be the problem they've been trying to contain. I wish I could say I ran. I wish I could say I screamed or hit someone or did anything that made me feel like I still had control over my own body. But I didn't. I just stood there. Because when Linda said, "Your sister," Something inside me didn't explode. It hesitated. Like a door in my mind had been nudged open a few millimeters. And I hated that. Daniel moved closer to me again. Not fast, not aggressive. Worse than that. Careful. Like I was something fragile they didn't want to break too soon. "You're overwhelmed," he said softly. "Let's sit down." I shook my head hard. No, I'm not going anywhere." My voice cracked on the last word. Linda sighed like she was disappointed in me, not angry, just tired of repeating herself. "You always resist at this stage," she said. That sentence made my skin crawl. Stage. Like I was part of something structured, something rehearsed. I backed toward the wall, trying to keep distance, trying to think. But my thoughts weren't lining up properly. They kept slipping, like wet glass. "I don't have a sister," I said again, this time louder, more desperate. "I don't have anyone. You're lying." Linda didn't react immediately. She just opened the folder she brought and slid a photo across the desk. I didn't want to look, but I did. And the second I saw it, my stomach dropped so hard I thought I might fall. It was me. Younger, maybe late teens, standing next to a girl who looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same face shape, same smile. But I didn't recognize her. At all. My voice came out barely audible. "Who is that?" Linda watched me carefully. "That's Emily," she said. "My sister," I whispered automatically, then froze, because I said it without thinking. Like my mouth remembered something my mind didn't. Daniel exhaled slowly, like that was important, like that reaction confirmed something. "You see?" he said gently. "It's still there. It's just blocked." Blocked. That word made my head spin. I looked at the photo again, trying to force memory, anything. But instead of clarity, I got something worse. A feeling. Not a memory. A feeling of screaming. Of crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Of someone pulling me away from something. Or someone. I dropped the photo. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not real." Linda stepped forward slightly. "Do you remember the accident?" My throat tightened. "What accident?" Daniel answered this time, his voice low. "The one you survived." My vision blurred. And suddenly, a flash. Not clear, not complete, just pieces. Rain. A car door open. A scream. Someone yelling my name. Then nothing. I stumbled back hard into the wall. "No, stop!" I gasped. "Stop putting things in my head!" Linda frowned slightly. "That's not how this works," she said. "We're not putting anything in. We're removing what was already distorted." Daniel crouched slightly so he was at my eye level. This was the most terrifying part. He looked gentle, almost kind. "You've been carrying guilt for a long time," he said. "I don't have guilt," I snapped immediately. But my voice wasn't convincing anymore, even to me. Linda flipped another page in the folder. "And the inheritance issue?" she said casually. That word hit differently. Inheritance. My chest tightened. "What inheritance?" I asked. Daniel hesitated for a half a second, just half, but I saw it. Linda didn't, or pretended not to. She continued. "Your parents left everything in trust after the accident. You were supposed to share it with Emily." My mouth went dry. "I don't have parents," I said instantly, then stopped. Because I wasn't sure anymore. That was the moment I felt it. Not fear. Something worse. Instability. Like my identity was loosening at the edges. Daniel stood again. "We're going in circles," he said quietly. "We need professional help." I shook my head violently. "No clinic, no more places. I'm not going anywhere with you." Linda closed the folder and said something that made everything colder. "You already agreed." I froze. "What?" She tilted her head slightly. "You signed the consent last month." My heart slammed. "I never signed anything." Daniel looked at me, and for the first time, there was something almost sad in his expression. "We recorded it," he said softly. My breath stopped. "Recorded?" Linda nodded. "You asked for help," she said. "You said you didn't trust your memory anymore. You said you wanted us to take over decisions until you stabilized." I felt like the floor tilted. "No, I didn't." But even as I said it, a flicker appeared. A memory. Me crying, me yelling, me saying, "I don't know what's real anymore." I grabbed my head. "No, no, no, stop." Daniel stepped forward again. "This is why we didn't want to overwhelm you," he said. "You resist every time the truth comes up." The truth. That word felt like a weapon now. My phone suddenly rang, from the counter. I jumped. Daniel didn't move. Linda didn't move. They both just watched me. I reached for it with shaking hands. Unknown number. I answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then a woman's voice, whispering, fast, panicked. "You need to leave the house right now." My blood went cold. "Who is this?" A pause, then, "It's Emily." My entire body froze. That name again. Emily. I whispered, "I don't have a sister." The voice on the phone cracked slightly. "Yes, you do, and they're doing it again." My breath stopped. Doing what? A sound on the line, like someone covering the mic. Then, "They made you forget the first time." My knees weakened instantly. "What are you talking about?" The voice became urgent. "You didn't lose your memory from an accident." A pause. Then the sentence that broke everything open. "They did it to you on purpose." The call suddenly cut. Dead silence. I stared at the phone, hands shaking violently. Linda sighed behind me. "That's enough," she said calmly. I turned slowly. "What did she mean?" I whispered. Daniel looked at the phone, then at me, and said, "There is no Emily calling you." But this time, I wasn't sure which part was real anymore. If someone showed you memories you didn't trust, and a person claiming the opposite truth, who would you believe? Linda stepped forward and said quietly, "It's time." And I realized, whatever time meant, I was already inside it. "Time for what?" I asked. But my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It came out thin, unsteady, like I was listening to myself from a distance. Linda didn't answer immediately. She just walked past me calmly and picked up my phone from the counter, like it belonged to her, like everything in this house did. Daniel moved closer to me again, blocking the doorway without actually standing in it. Not trapping me, just making it clear I didn't have many directions left. "You're escalating," he said softly. "That call wasn't real." My hand started shaking again. "You didn't hear it," I snapped. "You don't know what I heard." He nodded like I was confirming his point. "That's exactly what we mean." Linda tapped on my phone screen. "I'm going to disable unknown calls," she said casually. Something inside me snapped. "Give that back!" I reached for it. She didn't even flinch, just held it slightly higher. "You're reacting emotionally again," she said. That word, again, hit harder than anything else. Like this wasn't the first time. Like I had done this before. I backed away. My chest was tightening. "I want to leave," I said. Daniel sighed. "You always say that when the memories start surfacing." "I don't care," I said. "I'm leaving." I moved toward the hallway. And that's when Daniel finally stepped in front of me. Not aggressive, not loud, just final. "No," he said simply. That one word changed everything. Because it wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a concern. It was a decision. I stared at him. "You can't stop me." He looked almost tired now, like this conversation had happened too many times. "You said that last time, too," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. "Last time?" Linda spoke from behind him. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I turned toward her. "Harder for who?" She didn't answer. Instead, she opened the folder again and pulled out a single document, sliding it across the table toward me. My name was on it, again. But this time, it wasn't medical. It was legal. A court authorization, emergency guardianship, temporary incapacity ruling. Approved, stamped, signed. My hands trembled as I picked it up. "No," I whispered. "No, this isn't real." Daniel stepped closer. "It is," he said gently. "A judge reviewed everything." I shook my head violently. I would remember going to court. Linda tilted her head slightly. "You didn't attend," she said. "You weren't stable enough." My breathing turned shallow. "So you just decided I'm insane?" Daniel flinched slightly at that word. "No," he said quickly. "We documented everything." Everything. That word again. Like I was a project, a file, a case study. I looked at the paper again. My signature was there, perfect, too perfect. But something felt off. Not wrong enough to deny, not right enough to trust. That was the worst part. I stepped back slowly. "You forged it," I said. Linda's expression finally changed. Not anger, but something colder. Disappointment. "No," she said quietly. "We preserved it." A silence dropped into the room. Heavy, pressing. Then my phone buzzed again, still in Linda's hand. She looked at the screen and paused, for the first time. Just a fraction of hesitation. Daniel noticed too. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she turned the screen toward him. I couldn't see the message fully, but I saw one word. "Run." My stomach dropped. Daniel frowned. "That's not..." Another buzz, then another. Linda's grip tightened slightly. My phone was now lighting up non-stop, messages flooding in. Unknown numbers, blocked numbers, all repeating variations of "Run, get out, they did it again." My heart started pounding. "Who is that?" I whispered. Linda suddenly locked the screen. "Stop," she said sharply. Not to me, to Daniel. That was the first time I saw real tension between them. Daniel looked at her. "What is going on?" Linda's voice dropped lower. "This wasn't supposed to escalate yet." My blood turned cold. "Escalate?" I repeated. They both ignored me for a second, like I wasn't the priority anymore, like something outside this room had just entered the equation. Then Daniel said something I didn't expect. She's remembering faster than last time. Last time. That phrase hit me like a physical udar. I stepped back. What last time? I demanded. Linda finally looked at me directly, and this time her voice wasn't calm anymore. It was controlled urgency. The first reset didn't hold long enough. My vision blurred. Reset? Daniel exhaled slowly. We were hoping this time it would stabilize. My mouth went dry. What are you talking about? Linda stepped forward slightly and said, You didn't survive the accident the way you think you did. Everything stopped. Even sound felt like it disappeared. Daniel added quietly, You were brought back, but not fully. My knees nearly gave out. What does that mean? Linda looked at me for a long moment, then said, Your memory was rebuilt after the trauma response fractured it. I shook my head. No, that's not possible. Daniel nodded slightly. It is, and it saved your life. Saved my life. Those words should have comforted me, but they didn't. Because nothing about this felt like saving. It felt like control. My breathing turned uneven. And Emily? I whispered. Silence. Linda hesitated. Just a fraction. Then, there is no clean version of that memory for you. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. They weren't just hiding the truth. They were choosing which truth I was allowed to have. A loud knock suddenly came from the front door. All three of us froze. Another knock. Harder. Urgent. Daniel looked at Linda. Linda looked at me. And for the first time, none of them had control of the situation. A voice from outside shouted, Open the door! Police! My heart stopped. Police. Linda moved fast. Too fast. She grabbed my arm. Don't say anything, she whispered. Daniel stepped back slightly and said something I will never forget. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. The doorknob turned, and in that exact moment, everything I thought I understood about my life started collapsing. If police arrive while the people controlling your reality tell you to stay silent, who are you more afraid of? The door swung open, and everything changed. The front door opened so slowly it felt intentional. Like whoever was outside didn't just want to come in, they wanted us to feel it happening. Linda's grip on my arm tightened instantly. Not painful, but controlling. A reminder. Stay still. Don't speak. A man in a police uniform stepped inside first, then another, both scanning the room like they already knew what they were walking into. The first officer spoke immediately. Evening. We received a disturbance call from this address. His eyes moved across all three of us and paused on me, just a fraction longer than normal. Daniel stepped forward smoothly. Officer, there's no disturbance, he said calmly. My wife is experiencing a mental health episode. My stomach dropped. My wife. Not our situation. Not there's confusion. Just that. Labeled instantly. I turned to him. What did you just say? Linda squeezed my arm slightly harder. A warning, but I shook her off. For the first time, I didn't care. I called nobody, I said quickly. They're controlling. Ma'am, the second officer interrupted gently. Can you step over here for a moment? I froze. That tone. Not hostile, not believing, just procedural. Like I was already placed into a category in their minds. Daniel sighed, like this was exhausting for him. She's been paranoid for weeks, he added. We've been working with a clinic. Clinic. That word again. The officers exchanged a look. Not disbelief. Not certainty either. Just familiarity. That made my chest tighten. Linda finally let go of my arm, slowly, carefully, like releasing something fragile. But she didn't step away. She stayed close enough to anchor me. That's what it felt like. Anchor or cage, I couldn't tell anymore. The first officer looked at me directly. "Ma'am, are you feeling unsafe right now?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first, because every answer felt dangerous. If I said yes, I'd be unstable. If I said no, I'd be agreeing with them. So I said the only thing I could. "They are lying." Silence. The room shifted, not dramatically, but subtly, like a line had been crossed. Daniel raised his hand slightly. "We understand she's confused." I snapped. "I am not confused." My voice cracked. "I got calls, messages, a woman named Emily." At that moment, Linda stepped forward, calm again, too calm. "There is no Emily," she said softly. And then she looked at the officers. "She's referring to hallucinated contact again." My blood turned cold. Hallucinated. That word hit like a physical strike. "No," I said immediately. "No, that's not." But the second officer raised a hand. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us for evaluation." My world tilted. "No," I repeated. "No, I'm not going anywhere with them." I turned to the first officer. "Please, look at the messages. Look at my phone." Linda already had it. She held it up gently. "I already showed them," she said. I stared at her. "You showed them what?" She looked at me with something almost pitying. "The context," she said. My heart started racing. "What context?" Daniel stepped closer again. "Enough," he said quietly. But this time his voice wasn't calm. It was firm, final. The first officer spoke again. "Ma'am, we have documentation from your spouse and your legal guardian." Legal guardian. My body went cold. "I don't have a guardian," I said instantly. But Linda already had the folder. She handed it over. The officer looked through it briefly, then nodded slightly. "We're going to proceed with a temporary wellness hold for your safety." My knees nearly collapsed. "You can't do that," I whispered. The officer looked at me gently. "We can, and we are." Daniel stepped forward, not looking at me anymore, looking at the officers. "Thank you," he said, like this was cooperation, not betrayal. That moment broke something inside me, because nobody here was reacting like I was a victim. They were reacting like I was a problem being managed. As the officers moved closer, I stepped backward. "No," I whispered. "Please, you don't understand." And then I did the only thing left. I shouted. "She's not my sister! They made that up! They're altering everything I remember!" The room went silent again. Even the officers paused, just briefly. And that's when Linda said something softly. Not to them, to me. "You're doing it again." Something about her tone, not anger, not fear, just confirmation, like she had predicted this exact moment. And suddenly, the first officer looked at me differently, less uncertain, more decided. My stomach dropped, because I realized something horrifying. This wasn't a fresh situation for them. They had already been briefed on how I would behave. The second officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, please cooperate." I backed away again, my heart pounding. I looked at Daniel. "You're letting them do this?" He hesitated, just half a second. Then, This is for your safety. That sentence shattered me more than anything else, because it wasn't hate. It wasn't cruelty. It was conviction. He believed it. As the officers reached me, I turned desperately toward the hallway, my only chance, my only exit. And I ran, barefoot, straight down the hallway, past the kitchen, past the office, my mind screaming one thing: not here, not like this. Behind me, I heard footsteps, not rushing, controlled, like they already knew I wouldn't get far. I reached the back door, unlocked it, but before I could open it fully, a hand grabbed my shoulder. I screamed, twisted, fought. But it wasn't violent, just overwhelming. Too many hands, too much control. And the last thing I heard before everything blurred was Daniel's voice. Not loud, not angry, just resigned. I'm sorry. Then everything went white. I don't know how long I was out. Minutes, hours, days. Time doesn't feel real after that point. When I woke up, I was in a white room. Not a hospital room exactly. Too quiet, too clean. No windows I could clearly see. A woman sat beside me. Not Linda, not Daniel. Someone else. Calm voice, professional tone. Do you know where you are? I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. She continued gently. You experienced a dissociative episode triggered by trauma recall. I blinked. Trauma recall. Not accident, not hallucination, just labeled. I whispered, Where is my husband? She paused, then said carefully, He's cooperating with your care plan. Care plan. That word again. I sat up slowly, my head pounding. My phone, I said. I need my phone. She hesitated, then handed it to me. No messages, no calls, nothing. Except one thing. A note saved. Not typed. Voice memo. From an unknown contact. I pressed play. A woman's voice. Calm, but urgent. If you're hearing this, they've restarted the narrative again. My breath stopped. You're not unstable. You were conditioned after the accident. The first version of you tried to expose everything. A pause, then, they erased her. My hands went cold. The voice continued. Linda is not your mother-in-law. She's part of the program oversight team. Another pause. Then the final line. And Daniel is not your husband in any legal sense. He's your assigned handler. Silence. I dropped the phone, my entire body shaking, because suddenly, nothing I had lived through felt certain anymore. Not love, not marriage, not memory, not even identity. And on the wall beside me, a small camera clicked, watching, waiting. If your entire life could be rewritten by people who insist it's for your safety, would you even trust your own memories anymore?